This is a quick look at the interface. First thing on the opening screen is that the illustrations on the top are about projects, the illustrations on the bottom are about families. Families are kind of like blocks in AutoCAD or components in SketchUp or cells in MicroStation. They're repeatable objects, so like a table, a window, a door, something like that. Projects are one data file, and in that data file you have all the information graphically and non-graphic about the different components of a building. I just want to explain each of the parts of the interface, and to do that, if I open the tutorial file that's in chapter 1, which is the Usonian house, the Frank Lloyd Wright house, I'll open it up. If we look at the 3D view, which is the house icon at the top, you can see the whole model. And what I want to do is explain the different named parts of the interface. So first part is the application button, which is the purple R, and any black arrows that you see indicate that there are commands underneath the black arrow. So on the application button there are all the file related commands: create a new project, open a project, save a project, save as, if you're going to save it as another name or you just want to check the location it's being saved at. For example, save as a project, and here's the destination, and save. And what happens is it makes backups. So one of the things I wanted to point out here was when you do the save as project, you probably want to check the options and make sure that this does not say 20, but maybe reduce it to maybe keep 3 backups. And then what happens is that these files will be numbered this is the backups .0001. After you get to 3 and it creates 4 because you've saved 4 times, it will delete 1, so it will just keep the latest 3 backups. But you're always working in the named project, not in the backups. Should the named project get damaged, you could open this and save it, and it would be a RVT file, a Revit file, like shown here. So what else about the application menu up here? File related commands. On the right hand side, a listing of projects that you've been in. If you want to keep them on that list so it doesn't scroll down and eventually disappear from the list, you can pin it. It means that it will stay on that list as you continue to work on other projects. Other important thing here, the options bar. Options bar lets you, the options button lets you make some settings in your project. The ones that we looked at were under general, changing the time to 15 minutes, so that if you haven't saved within 15 minutes, you'll get a prompt to do so. The username typically is something that's related to your Windows username on your machine. That doesn't come into play until much later if we ever get to look at work sharing. User interface is that you have on your user interface, you have all of these different tabs: architecture, but also structure, also building systems. 3 different products that were rolled into one. And if you don't want to be using them, you can turn off the display of these on your interface. So what we did was we turned off everything except the one option that says architectural tab and tools. So when I say OK, they disappeared from the interface up here, keeping it much more simple. The other thing we did is that when you double click on something, so to control double click behavior, when you double click on something that's a 3D symbol like this tree, generally what it means is that it opens it up, and it gets that from the setting under options and user interface and double click options down here. When the product is first delivered, if you haven't changed anything, it's usually set up like this, where it says a double click on a family would mean that you're editing a family. Not terribly useful, because what happens is that you select objects inside Revit to see their properties, so you could be making changes to them. So that's a sugar maple tree, that's a sycamore tree. But if you accidentally double click on it, what happens is it opens up the family, thinking that you're wanting to do some editing of the family itself, which is typically not what you want to do. And then you're going to have to close the family so you can get back into the project. Now, Revit has 3 different drafting environments. It has the project environment, which is what we're working in. It has the family edit environment, the family editor, and it also has one other one called the massing environment, which we're not going to use till much later on. But we're going to work primarily in the project environment. So back to where I was going with this, if I go to the options and I go to the user interface, for double click options, I typically want to say here for family, do nothing if I double click on a family. Right beside the application button, the quick access toolbar, or the QAT, has the most used commands that are in the product. So for example, open, save, undo, redo, dimension, text, 3D view, those kind of things. When you use the product, you may choose to go this particular route, where you can right click on that quick access toolbar and say show it below the ribbon. The reason for doing that would be to give you all of this extra space so that you can keep commands down here. And that would be kind of an opening for me explaining the parts of the interface that are not so obvious. On your mouse, the scroll bar lets you roll forward and back to zoom in and zoom out. If you hold the scroll bar down, it gives you the pan command. And if I roll in, if I do a double click, it does fit. And if I do a shift and scroll bar, it gives me the orbit option. The other thing you notice about the interface is that it has what are called context menus. So the right click, it's also called the right click menu, or the context menu, it's the same thing. If you're on the screen and you right click, you'll see commands that seem appropriate for that context. For example, zoom in region, which is kind of like zoom window in AutoCAD, or right click zoom to fit, which was the same as me saying double clicking on the scroll bar. These are used a lot on the interface, so you see that if I right click on the quick access toolbar, I can show it above the ribbon, which is the part with all the icons on it, or show it below the ribbon. And I guess say better idea to put it down here. If you go to your most used commands, like on the architecture tab, you're drawing a wall, a door, a window, a component, you can right click on any command and say add that to the quick access toolbar. So I could be adding the door command, the window command, the component command. The benefit of that would be if I navigate around in my project, I still have the commands accessible with one click from my quick access toolbar. So you don't have to kind of peck around on the interface trying to find the actual command that you're after. And some people like to work that way. The title bar on the top shows you the product. It also shows you the project that you're in, and it shows you the view that you're in. If I look at if I show you the 3D views, there is a view that has curly brackets around it, this one here called 3D. If I right click on it and delete it, which is the other thing the context menu does, that gets created the first time you use that house icon. So hitting the house icon is actually you creating that view, and you can navigate around in the project by picking on the view that you want to look at. And whatever view I'm looking at, you see if I pick this one, section box cut, then up on the title bar it says that's the name of the project, that's the section box cut. Be a little cautious that you can open multiple projects in Revit. So if I went back and said open the prefab Charles Wiley house like this, I'm actually working in both projects at the same time. A Control Tab key is a way of moving between windows. So in one case I could be inside the one project and I can Control Tab to come back to the other project. It toggles through the open windows. A good idea when you are working on multiple projects, when you are finished with one, like the Charles Wiley house here, would be to close it out because it's using RAM, and that way I'm just working in the Usonian Right House project. To the right of the title bar, the Info Center. Info Center, two main uses are really that it could be that it helps you search and look for information about things. If I said search for families, it goes and finds information on that. If I click on the question mark, that's the help, or the F1 key, brings up the help command. If I click on the App Store, these are additional little programs that some are free, some you can purchase, but they do additional things inside Revit. One that might be of great interest is the fact that you can do energy analysis. So if I did a search for that, I can see from the list what's available. Let me just try energy. I don't see it there, but that's the about. There's lighting analysis, structural analysis, so a lot of these are free and you can add them to your program. Close that. So I'm back in the project, and then the other thing up here would be just be aware that you can minimize, so it's shrinking it down, and then you can open it up. This kind of restore from say a smaller size, where you can be sizing it and then maximizing it to make it big again. And this would be actually you cancelling out of the project. That would be are you leaving the project? I'm going to cancel on that. Not the same as what you've got in the window. The window is similar kind of commands, but for each window. So minimizing would be making it small on the bottom here. And then if I choose one of the windows and maximize it, that's me bringing it to the forefront. Closing it is me closing it out, and I can have multiple views open at the same time. Next part is the ribbon. The ribbon is made up of multiple tabs, and each tab has kind of a specific collection of commands. Architecture is the tab. Build is the panel, and then in the panel are your building or modeling a wall, a door, a window. See, for example, if I go to circulation, the commands that are grouped are creating a railing, creating a ramp, creating a stair. Under the Insert tab, this is mostly to do with linking of files, like in AutoCAD you might XREF something. Here you can link one Revit file to another. There's an international standard, link IFC files, link CAD files. Also create decals. Say, you want a picture on a wall or an image on a television. You can use point clouds. You can import CAD files. You can bring in another Revit project as a group of objects in here. Right now, all I'm really interested in is the fact that where you've got the choice of linking or importing, it's generally better to link a CAD file than it is to bring it into your project. And one thing you don't do in a Revit project is you never explode a CAD file. It can corrupt the file. So linking is better. That would mean that if there was a change in the CAD file, the change would be passed along to the Revit file. Next tab over, the main takeaway from the Annotate tab should be the fact that anything I do in here is kind of specific to the view that I'm placing it in. So whereas model objects, when you put them into the model, they're visible in all the views. If I went to, say, a ground level plan, and I went and I did something in here, let me just say place text and click to place text. I'll just type in text so you can see it, and I might have to say VG annotation text. I just need to make sure it's switched on so you can see it. But in placing it in this view, it's not visible in that view. It's not visible in that view, even though these are floor plan. Takeaway at this point in time should be that annotation is view specific, and these being all the different views that you can be creating in a project. Collaborate would be used when you've got multiple people working in a project at the same time. I won't spend too much time on that. View are the types of views that you create. A lot of them are down here already. See, for example, creating a section, creating a 3D view, or under the house symbol, the 3D view, creating a camera, creating the 3D view, the one that was the curly brackets, doing a walkthrough, those things. And we'll come back to those a bit later on. But also things like enlarged views, for example, if I said I need a call out of this area, which is the I'll come back to that later on. And you can generate one view from another view. But right now, just the View tab is generally where all the views are. Couple of things on there. Look at the switch windows. That's where it shows you which windows you've got open. So you could be navigating between windows like that. The management of the RAM on your machine really needs to be done by you. So when you open a view, it's important that you know that you're not automatically closing other views. So when I open various 3D views here, or look at some of the renderings that I left in here, because I click on it and open it doesn't mean that I have closed the other ones. So back up here, the ones that I want you to see are, if you said cascade, that would be like put the windows on top of each other. If you said tile, it means put them side by side. But you have to manage the RAM on your machine. So generally what you do is you don't want to have windows open in the background while you're working on a window that's enlarged. So when I do, I want ground view and I make it large like that, it's a little inconsistent, but you see when I see it, what it should be doing is it should be showing me a red cross on here and up here on my interface. I'm going to click on another view to open it up. You see there's the red cross there, and there's the red cross there. It's a little inconsistent into when it shows up, but the idea is that when you see that, you know that there are multiple views open, right? Which I could confirm like that. And when you want to close them, you make the view large that you are working in, and then you click on Close Hidden, and that reduces the number of open windows, reduces the amount of RAM that you're using, and so you're more efficient. Other part on the interface, I think that was Manage tab, coming along the tabs. Materials, for example, this shows you which materials. Yours might look like this when you first open it, but when you click on that button to open the library, these are materials that are in your project. These are materials that are in the Revit library. We'll use that later on. Object snapping is where you can set default values for drafting. The book suggests setting values for these. Let me just do it quickly here so that you see it. If I said 5 feet and then the colon symbol, and suppose for my angles I'm going to just leave the one that says 45 degrees. Now if I save my project, and I'll close it, and then I'll come back into it here. The way that's supposed to work is if you're drawing something, like say you're drawing a wall, that the zoom factor affects kind of snapping of your project. So I don't know if you can see that. As I move my cursor, I set it to 4 feet, so as I move my cursor, at a certain point, it snaps to 4 feet. And if I continued, and the other one I set was 45 degrees, so you see how I can go up at 45 degrees, and again, it's going to snap when I get to 4 feet. I think changing that is marginally beneficial to you. I think if you know that you can type in your values as you draft, and get exactly what you want here. I need to just take out and hit the enter key. Right, that's exactly 5 feet. If I just point up the way and I say 4 feet, that's exactly 4 feet. Something's not mentioned in the book. If I said something like 2 and I put meters, 2m, I can draw 2 meters length. If I point and I said something like 3355 millimeters, that's exactly what I'm going to get in terms of life size for the units that I'm drawing with. So I think it's a little overstated that the setting those values are a big benefit to you. If I go back to the manage and the snaps again, you can restore values to go back to whatever was there before. The other thing is these endpoints let you connect to objects, and in theory it would speed things up if you turn off ones that you're not using. Perpendicular and tangent, so that when you're drawing something, if I said something like say under the annotation, if I said I'm going to draw just a line, a simple 2D line, you see that it will find there's the end point of objects that are there, and it will snap because these are like the running O snaps. But also if I had, let me just put in a circle quickly. So if I draw a circle and I draw a line, So even although I don't have, on the Manage tab, even though I don't have the Snap Center on, if you ever want to use them as you draft, you can simply type in the fast key, SC for center, for example. So if I was to say I want to annotate, I want to draw a line, just a line, these are my running O-snaps, see end, middle, and there's no running O-snap to find the center, but I type in SC and then I touch the circle, it will snap to the middle. Then escape gets me out of any command all the way out. If you're in a command, I'm going to type in WA for wall. A single escape takes me one step back. I'm still in the wall command, so that I can continue to pick and place walls. But escape takes me all the way out of any command. Use that in preference to what the books often say, which is go up here and click modify. In other words, if you were in the wall command, the way the books often say is go over there and click to leave the command. It's escape will take you out. Just drag this way and delete this. That was under the Manage tab, and I think that was the main things that I wanted to say. You can set your location for the project, so this shows that if you put in a project address, it will take you to that location in the world. And for example, there's my Zimmerman house as designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Next thing over, add-ins. I'm not going to spend much time on that in the class, but it's generally third-party add-ins where you can connect to other products or do something that Revit by itself is not designed to do. You won't have that because that's software produced by IDEA, and you won't have that because that's software produced by a Dutch company. You will have the Modify tab. So this is things like the Align tool, Move tool, copy multiple times, offset, rotate, trim, extend, mirror, array, all of these useful commands that we'll be using a lot as we make our model. The way you work could be either to use that, or you might like the idea of fast keys, like typing in WA for wall, draw your wall, type in DR for door, place your door. You can continue to work like that. So I want to show how to create a fast key. I'm going to hit escape to get out. You can do it under the options and user interface. So we saw how you could control double click functions, but key in shortcuts, just to make sure first of all that under, say, the view tab, if I look at my 3D views, if I look at camera, you can see there's a shortcut called CA because I entered one. So I'm going to do one for a different command. Say the Manage tab has materials is empty. Let me think of something that's not there. Here's a good one. This here, let me drag this over. That is my project browser. Right? So for example, if I look on the user interface, if I go to the view and I look at user interface, this is typically how you can turn things on and off. I've added that one already myself as well. I typed in my setup, I have BB as the project browser. So I want to show you where you could create them in order that you know how to add them. Let me drag this over. Not a good idea to leave them floating like that because it uses RAM. Much better idea to move to the middle center of the right hand side and release it. So this is the way I typically work, and that means that this window is actually that size. This is not covering a part of the window. The window is actually matched to the available space that's there. So let me pick an example. Here's a good one, say for architecture, right? Here there's no command for, say, let me create a ceiling. There's no shortcut for let's create a ceiling, but I know it's on the architecture tab. So what I can do is I can say options, user interface, keyboard shortcuts. Look not at all of the tabs, but look at the architecture tab. So if I just go down to architecture, then I can see here commands that some of them have a shortcut, some of them don't. I was looking for the one that was my ceilings. So if I move down here to where it says roof ceilings, automatic ceiling, if I pick that line and if I go, let's just as an example, I'm going to just say XX and assign. Right, let me try a different one. I want to show you if I do CE and assign, I can add that. If I pick something, for example this thing here, just to show you, if I picked in SB, which is already there, if there is something being used by the product, Revit will tell me that it's already assigned to something. And you'd have to you could still do it and tab through it, but probably best to have just one for each command. So CE is going to be my ceiling command, right? I can so I've got it here. Let me just make sure. CE is my ceiling command. Good thing here is that you can export this. It gives you a text file called an XML file, extended markup language. And if I give it a name like Jim's keyboard shortcuts, I can save that. And it means that anytime I want, I can go to any machine and I can say import and pick it and bring them in, and I'll just say overwrite the ones that were already there. So that's and just to prove the point, you'd go to like a ceiling plan view. Let me just draw a wall quickly. But now if I type in CE, you see it puts me into the ceiling command, and I don't have to remember, okay, it's architecture tab and it's ceiling here, right? I can just skip. I can just type in CE and it puts me in the command and lets me create ceilings. Much faster, and a sign to potential employees that you use the product in a very efficient way. That's the top part of here. Then the next thing we did in the class was in the 3D view. We orbited to look at this piece of the model. We picked like a tree, and what you saw is on this part of the interface called the properties palette. This was the analogy I used was my driver's license. If I could say on my driver's license, change my height to 6'5", change the color of my hair to black, and it actually did that. That's what this does. So for example, I can use this to change from one tree, the grey birch, to Japanese maple, and that would be a powerful feature of it. The other part of it that I showed was that if I pick on this wall on the end here, the properties of that tell me the base of that wall is on a horizontal plane called 0, 1 ground, but then 3 feet below that. and the top of the wall is unconnected to anything else in the project, but it's at a height of 4 feet 1. So it's 4 feet 1, up the top of it is 4 feet 1 above the ground level. And if you see, if I drag up here, you'll see that the value of the height changes, but you as a user will be able to say, I want that to be 5 feet, and see the change. If I just pick it again. Or I want it to be 2 meters, and see the change. Or 25 centimeters. But if you don't use units, oh, that's a bit slow. Sorry. Maybe make that 250 centimeters. Right. So you can get whatever size you want without having to worry too much about units. So it was set to be something like 4 feet high. So there we go. And this is a quick way to edit multiple objects in your project, because you don't have to do them one by one. I could, for example, pick, right-click, select all instances in the entire project, and then I could go and make changes. On the right-hand side, Project Browser is the way that you navigate around. You saw me use it already, but if I double-click on a view, that's me looking at the view. And then inside the view, what you've got is the option of so here, for example, in this interior is controlling the, let me just change the size here a little bit for my recording. You've got the other part of the interface, which is the visibility controls, which is in every view, is down here. And these are unique to each view. So you see, for example, if I say turn on shadows, or turn off shadows, or show shaded, or show realistic, that's how I could control the graphic display in a particular view, but each of them is independent of the other. And then also down here, we'll do more on this later, but see if sun setting, if for example I said show me the winter solstice, apply, and then I'm going to change the time a little bit, say 1 o'clock, apply, 2 o'clock, apply. You see how I'm actually seeing the shadow pattern in the room from whatever location, which was Manchester, New Hampshire, whatever time of day I pick and time of year. I've got that in here. Those were the main things. There is also down here, when you're drafting, you could try and keep an eye on this, which is the prompt area, a bit like the command line in AutoCAD, but really not so useful. So you see here, when I say place a wall, or WA, down on the bottom left it says click to enter wall start point, and then it's telling me that I can do things like, you know, flip its direction as I go, and then pick to place the endpoint. And we'll talk more about some of these things when we get to later classes. But that's basically the run through of the interface. The gotchas, the main one that I run into, there's two of them I'll show here. Main one is that this part of the interface, the ribbon up here, was designed so that when you click on this white button, you can change the display of the interface to give you more drawing space down here. So you see it just kind of cycling through, show me all the commands, or just show me the build panel and then I have to come down and pick it, or just show me the tab and then I have to come in and pick it, which is all well and good. But what happened is that they also made it so that if you double click on a tab, instead of single clicking to move between the tabs, if you accidentally double click, it cycles through the interface. So typically in a class I get the question, why does my interface look different from yours? And usually what it is somebody has done a double click instead of a single click. Another kind of gotcha on the interface is that when you pick an object, it shows in green additional commands that can relate to the object that you've selected. And sometimes the fact that the interface is changing on you as you're drafting can be confusing. The biggest gotcha that I run into is under, say, architecture. If you start to do something like, say, create a floor, it puts you into what's called sketch mode. So you can tell it changed the context. It's waiting for you to draw a two-dimensional sketch. And you typically go in and draw that sketch and then say that you're finished and you've got a floor. And you could go back and edit it and change it anytime that you want, but let me just delete it. Just going to hit the delete key. The gotcha is that people start to do something in the commands, so they go to the command that says create a floor, and you're in sketch mode and you're starting to draw something, the shape of the floor that you want to create. And you've got to create a closed shape. Then you navigate away for some reason, like maybe you think you want to put a dimension in here. You go looking for something else, and pieces of your interface grey out because they can't be used while you're in sketch mode. You get kind of lost. You don't know quite what to do, so you're stuck, and you have to like escape to get out, or click to go back to. So let me just do it again. If I navigate around, what I was trying to show is like you can click to go back to this location, and then you've really just got two choices: finish the floor that you'd started, or cancel out. Right, so it's really about that's the other gotcha that's there. So accidentally changing the look of the interface is one, like this, by double clicking and navigating away from the commands that require you to draw a two-dimensional sketch to get a 3D object. And that would be everything I wanted to show on the interface.